Before there were nations, before there were empires. There was Greece in the stillness of time, where myth and memory blur. There lies a place, not vast, not powerful in size, but unimaginably immense in legacy, a land of fractured mountains and brilliant coastlines, cradled by the Mediterranean Sea, that gave birth to ideas the world would never forget. Philosophy, democracy, theater, and war, all shaped by the minds and hearts of men who once walked the marbled steps of ancient Greece. But this story is not just about marble statues or dusty ruins. This is the story of an idea, an identity, forged through centuries of glory, blood, and unrelenting ambition. The history of ancient Greece begins not with armies or empires, but with gods and stories. In the earliest days, before recorded time, the Greeks looked to the sky, the sea, and the mountains, and they saw gods in everything. Zeus hurled lightning from Olympus, Poseidon stirred the seas. Athena, born from the mind of Zeus himself, watched over wisdom and war alike. These myths weren't just bedtime tales, they were the foundation of Greek identity, passed down in epic poems and woven into the fabric of everyday life. And then, from this mythic past, emerged a civilization around 3000 BCE, the first real stirrings of Greek culture took root on the island of Crete. These were the Minoans, a mysterious, seafaring people named after the legendary King Minos. They built elaborate palaces, the most famous being Knossos, and they worshipped strange gods with bull-like features and danced in complex ceremonies that even now leave archaeologists puzzled. The Minoans were artists, traders, and architects, but their civilization was struck by catastrophe, a volcanic eruption, likely the eruption of Thera, present-day Santorini, dealt a massive blow, triggering tsunamis and economic collapse. In the aftermath, another power rose on the Greek mainland, the Mycenaeans. Around 1600 BCE, they built fortified cities, Mycenae, Pylos, Tyrans, and left behind a rich archaeological record of gold masks, swords, and palatial structures. These were the Greeks of Homeric legend, the warriors of the Iliad, the ones who sailed to Troy and returned or perished for glory. Yet by 1100 BCE, their society fell. The reason remains debated: invasions, internal strife, or a broader Mediterranean-wide collapse. What followed was a Greek Dark Age, centuries of silence, when writing vanished and cities crumbled into isolated villages. But in this quiet, something stirred. By the 8th century BCE, Greece began to reawaken. The Greek alphabet, adapted from the Phoenician script, brought literacy back. Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, were committed to memory and passed on, shaping a shared heroic past. Villages grew into city-states, the Palaeus, fiercely independent, often hostile, but linked by language, religion, and Olympic Games. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, each carved its own path. Among them, Athens would rise as a beacon of philosophy and democracy, while Sparta would forge a society defined by discipline and war. Two cities, two worlds. Sparta, in the southern Peloponnese, built its strength on conquest and fear. After enslaving the neighboring Messenians, turning them into the serf class known as Helots, Sparta organized itself into a military machine. Boys were taken from their families at age 7, trained to fight, endure pain, and never show weakness. The individual was nothing, the city was everything. Athens, by contrast, embraced trade, culture, and eventually, democracy. In 508 BCE, under the guidance of Cleisthenes, Athens established a system where male citizens could vote, debate, and participate in governance. It wasn't perfect. Women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded, but revolutionary nonetheless. And from this fertile soil sprang Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Their ideas still shape our world. But freedom was not free. In the early 5th century BCE, Greece faced its greatest external threat yet, the mighty Persian Empire. Under Darius and then Xerxes, the Persians launched massive invasions, determined to bring the Greeks to heel. The Greeks, fractured and often feuding, had to unite or perish. What followed became legend. In 490 BCE, at the Battle of Marathon, A vastly outnumbered Athenian army defeated the Persians, sparking the myth of the long-distance runner. A decade later, at Thermopylae, King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans held the mountain pass against overwhelming Persian forces. Though they fell, their sacrifice inspired all of Greece. At Salamis, the Athenian navy dealt a crushing blow to the Persians, and at Plataea, the Greeks secured their freedom from the ashes of war, Athens' sword. Under Pericles, the city entered its golden age. The Parthenon rose over the Acropolis, adorned with the finest sculpture of the era. Theater flourished, with Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides giving voice to the human condition. Philosophers wandered the agora, questioning everything. Democracy reached new heights, yet was always fragile, limited, and prone to demagoguery. This golden age would not last. Rivalry with Sparta deepened. Ideologies clashed. Athens, with its naval empire and democratic ideals, Sparta, landlocked and authoritarian. In 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War erupted, a brutal 27-year conflict that shattered Greece. Thucydides, the historian and general, chronicled the war not with triumph, but with cold realism. He saw in it the dangers of hubris, the fragility of power, and the inevitability of decline. When arrogance replaces wisdom, Athens lost. Its empire collapsed, democracy faltered. Sparta briefly ruled, but even its victory was hollow. Out of this exhaustion, a new power emerged. From the north, Macedonia, once seen as a barbarian frontier, rose under King Philip II. He united the Greek city-states by diplomacy and force, and was assassinated before he could invade Persia. His son, a 20-year-old prodigy tutored by Aristotle, would change the world forever. Alexander the Great. In a decade of relentless conquest, Alexander swept through Asia Minor, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, and reached as far as India. He never lost a battle. He spread Greek language, art, and ideas across the known world. And when he died in 323 BCE, at just 32, he left behind a fragmented empire and a legacy that became legend. With Alexander's death, the classical era gave way to the Hellenistic age, a time of cosmopolitan cities, scientific discovery, and cultural fusion. Alexandria in Egypt became a beacon of knowledge. Archimedes calculated principles of physics. Euclid formalized geometry. Greek ideas mingled with Egyptian, Persian, and Indian thought, creating a new world culture. But Greece itself, the homeland, slowly declined. By the 2nd century BCE, Rome, rising in the west, began to absorb the Greek world. In 146 BCE, the Roman general Lucius Mummius sacked Corinth. Greece was now a province, Achaia, under Roman rule, yet Greece never truly vanished. The Romans, in all of Greek culture, preserved and imitated it. Roman gods mirrored Greek ones. Roman philosophers quoted Plato. Roman architects built with Doric and Ionic orders. To be educated in Rome was to know Greek, and so, even as the Greek city-states lost their independence, their ideas conquered. Time. The legacy of ancient Greece is not a simple story of rise and fall. It is a web of ideas, conflicts, dreams, and human contradictions. A civilization of both reason and myth, of democracy and slavery, of peace and endless war. It taught the world how to think and how to question, even now, thousands of years later. When we speak of justice, beauty, truth, or freedom, we echo the voices of men and women who lived under the same sun, by the same seas, on the same land we now call ruins. And perhaps that is the most Greek lesson of all, that in the brief, fragile flicker of human time, ideas can outlive empires.